Nerd on the Podcast is proudly partnered with Apogee Electronics and Odyssey Headphones, leaders in the field of audio. Yeah.
You would read an audiobook read by him? That's cool.
Yeah, I would mute.
What is, everyone? Welcome to Nerd on the Podcast. You didn't need, but you deserve, where all levels of nerd are welcome.
Yeah,
even if you're a brand new mutant.
Yeah.
Who even knows?
A baby.
A baby mutant.
Some might say.
From the minds of Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, we got heroes like the X-Men. Then came minds like Chris Clairemont, who wrote most of what we know of mutants in Marvel, which spawned X-Force, excuse me, X-Force, Excalibur, Generation X, Elites, Alpha Fight, and the one we're talking about today is the source material for the Fox-made, Disney-purchased film. And the New Mutants, the Demon Bear Epic Saga collection is what we're covering today. I'm very excited about this, but before we get started, my name is Corey.
I'm Caitlin.
See that, Ollie? That's how you roll off just the mess up. And I'm Tom.
Thanks for pointing it out in a different episode. I appreciate that.
And I'm
all the way.
Josh. And this episode is, as always, brought to you in part by the members of the Nerd On Nation, powered by Patreon.
Patreon.
As a member of the Nerd On Nation,
I feel like, was that the first time I was the only one to say it?
I think so.
If you pay attention, I usually don't say it.
Yeah.
None of us ever say it.
It's usually just Caitlin and Josh.
Yeah.
I did
Especially
whisper
now.
it, but
Yeah.
quietly.
Yes.
Anyways, Josh.
As a member of the Nerd On Nation, you do get fun perks like bonus episodes, early access to all of our episodes. You do get access to private servers in the Discord chat server where you can talk directly to us, and it's just
Discord
for
channel
members.
server, baby.
Huh?
Discord channel server.
Yeah, that's a thing. Look it up. Discounts. Discounts
Wow.
on merch and all that fun stuff. So lots to cover in that, meaning that there are multiple links. Nerdon.io/Patreon will get you to the Nerd On Nation. And then Nerdon.io/Discord will get you to our newly open to the public Discord server channel thing. But yeah, check that
Sound
out.
like Blue from Blue's Clues.
Such a fanfare we got going on this episode, y'all.
Yeah, but also our episodes are brought to you in part by our partners, Apogee, who equipped us with these hype mics, the ultimate podcast microphone, and Odyssey headphones.
Wasn't me.
They are fantastic. I can't say enough about
So
our
comf.
partners. They have just been
Wow.
incredibly
Such
supportive and
Such comf.
wonderful people to work with. But yeah, that is the housekeeping. On
I'm
with
actually,
the episode.
If I can just brag about these headphones for a minute, I was doing some film editing with them the other day, and usually I use my speakers to check everything, and it's
Yeah.
like a perfect match. It was wonderful. I didn't have to adjust anything much.
Oh.
Usually the old
Nice.
headphones I were using they were really cheap, so
Yeah.
I had to make an adjustment once it went to speakers for phones and all this. But these are just
Well, I
love
mean, the
'em.
thing to point out, just to get a little technical, is that these are open back headphones, and it's better to work with those and mix with open back because in closed back, all of the sound gets cupped in your head,
Correct.
and it can kind of sound. Sometimes it won't actually represent the sound great or
Right.
perfectly.
yeah.
So it's nice to have that open back and all that kind of stuff, and it sounds yummy. Hearing your guys' voices,
Yeah.
like
Like
That's
Learn
butter.
something every day.
Like butter.
Yeah, I was
Like
gonna say
butter.
that.
on the old
Yeah.
Nerd On
On the
podcast.
words of Mike Myers.
yes,
Yeah,
butter.
never knew that. It's crazy. But also, I mean, hey, we're doing a comic book, and we do got some affiliate baby stuff with that. With
Yeah.
nerdon.io/comicsology, the
What is
internet's
that,
number
Tom?
one source of comic books. Da-da-da.
Wow.
And I would say this that it definitely reading this comic book in that interface was really wonderful just because of the fact that you can do the panel to panel, and it just makes it newsflash, everyone. Even though it's a comic book, there are words. There are a lot of words.
There are
So
a
many
lot
words.
of
Panel to-
words.
500 pages worth of words, some might say.
Panel to panel, just reading it kind of gives you just a better idea of okay, cool. I don't have to squint and stuff like that. Sometimes with when you have the paper comic books, you have to push the the page so close to your face. But this here, it very well maneuvers through all the panels and stuff like that. And then as well, when you're done reading the entire page, it pulls out and shows you the whole page one more time, just so you get it all in
Yeah.
before you turn to the page. So
Having said that, now is also a wonderful time at the time of this recording to support your local stores. Order from them if you can. Any comics you're looking to read, including this one.
a good way to support them as well is just to buy a gift card.
Yeah.
Buy a gift card. It's really easy for them. They don't have to worry about stock and stuff like that.
Or
and,
shipping.
It's very low impact for them. So
Some
do
comic
that.
books, I think, or comic book stores are still, they have like shipping lists. I think the Capeless Crusaders was telling me about like their local store that they partner with has like a
Empire's
shipping
Carnival.
shipping lists. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet K.
Sweet K.
But yeah, I mean,
Shout out.
Mm-hmm.
this comic book is unlike, I think, anything that we've done, but it's completed, right? Right?
Yeah, I was
Tom?
gonna say. So this is
Yeah.
interesting because this is an epic collection, and so this is like part of what inspired, or this is the source material for the future Fox/Disney film, New Mutants, and this is called the Demon Bear Saga. But this epic collection actually comprises more issues than that. It has some annuals. But yeah, like Josh said, this is a completed work. So we are at the end going to rate it. And that brings us to our first segment of the show, which is
Guess
that
Grump. They're the new mutants, not the old mutants. These are the new guys now. We're reading about them. They got powers and they also have magic and they also fight pretend bears.
That's
I
it.
think
I was
That's it.
gonna
Yeah,
keep a
that's
straight face for that whole thing.
No, shut the
Corey,
fuck
you
up
went
on
into your lyrics, and I was like, well,
I
Never
think we
mind.
could shit that out for a Grammy.
Shout out to my improv teacher in high school. That one's for you.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you are brand new to the show, Guess That Grump is a segment where we are going to go around the screens, around the mics, whatever you want to call it, round robin, and guess who's going to have the lowest rating out of the group. Now, it's a scale from 0 to 5. No matter how high the number is, however, you are, if you're the lowest one in the group, you are going to be the grump for the week. And we encourage everyone to play along. And Corey will have a little segment from our Nerd On Nation.
I will. If you join our Nerd On Nation, you have the chance to participate in a poll. Get your name shout out if you get the Guess That Grump right. And a lot of the times, a lot of people actually do. It's very interesting to see.
Guess that grump or guess or gator.
They're learning us.
They're learning.
they're learning.
So since that always changes and we're never right, I'm going to go first and guess that the grump for this episode will be Josh.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
One for Josh.
It's a really weak guess because I really want to guess for Ali, but I'm going to just say Josh for posterity.
To make it spicy.
So it doesn't sound. So you don't have
Yeah.
to just cut me out and be like, all right, just put in the Tom guesses Ali thing.
Popcorn
Josh.
to me.
yeah. What you got, buddy?
I'm looking at my screen trying to judge who it will be.
Judging is wrong, Josh.
Yeah, I know. No
Unless you
judgments,
are a
but
judge in a court of law.
I
Okay,
will
Alfalfa.
say, Ollie.
Ali. All right.
See, it's smart. So fucking smart.
Oh, I'm just fucking popular, man. Ain't no
That's-
shame in that.
We're
Everyone
gonna
knows I hate
positively
reading.
spin that.
All right, Ollie, what you got?
I'm gonna go with Caitlin.
Oh,
Spreading the
Okay.
love. Spreading the
Oh,
love.
I'm
look
gonna
at her.
say it's
Look at, look,
Ali.
look at her be like, oh, you right.
Out of spite, I'll take it.
And then I'll take Caitlin as well.
Okay.
And
No votes for Tom or Corey. Interesting. All right,
Oh,
Nerd
shock.
on Nation
Wow,
says
huh.
Josh as well. So we have a 3-way tie for Josh, Ollie, and Caitlin, and then a 2-way tie for me and Tom going first. So
Nice.
probably I'll go first, then Tom, and then the three of you can duke it out. I don't care.
It'll
how.
be Thunderdome.
But now into the complete spoilers. Is that not wrong?
oh no, you're right.
Yeah. I usually jump the gun on that one, so I just want to make sure.
And if you're across the pond, then our first impressions.
Yeah.
We I don't know. We came up with that a long time. I don't know.
I don't-
But anyway,
you came
so
up with that. Don't put me into this.
Yeah.
Don't put me
so
into any of that.
Don't put that
Tom.
stupidity
This is
on
a
me.
genius idea.
I made up this entire podcast. I don't know where it came from, but you know,
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
that's why I say we. We got to take the
Okay.
we
Mhm.
and never the I.
Yeah.
But
Ride
I will
together, we die
say,
together.
yeah, I'm getting out of the car. So, everyone at home listening in, we're still in spoiler-free county. So we are going to do our initial reactions, what we first thought when we came upon this work of art, and hopefully without spoiling anything. So for me, New Mutants was always something that I felt was very fluid, kind of like you can't really tell what direction it's going in. And I'll talk a little bit about that later on after our meat and potatoes. And then after the race car tracks.
Yeah,
are out
someone's
of there.
drag racing in their room right now.
So,
Yeah.
no, New Mutants have always been kind of a little foreign to me because I didn't know really what was the premise of it until actually like maybe later on in college after like I joined the Caped Crusaders and everything like that. Like I started understanding what the X-Men and mutant landscape was like because there's so many team ups and you're kind of like, where does the New Mutants fall in line? And after reading this, it's funny because on Comixology you have two options. You have Demon Bear Saga and you have Demon Bear Saga the Epic Collection. And reading this, you definitely get a full picture of like this is how the team functions and it operates. And I think it was a really interesting and effective thing. And there's like a little like not a forward because that happens at the beginning, but like talks about how going back it's like a time capsule. It's not really something like a rerun like a TV show. But more like this is interesting where we came from and how where we are now.
Yeah.
And it's cool that if you go on any top essentials like what comic books to read for New Mutants, like this is always like number one. And it talks about like how the team is. So if you're looking to start a new comic book, especially with something that's not super like save the day and all that, a little bit more about the drama, this is a good place to go.
Yeah. I'll go next. I mean,
All right.
a little bit of a background, like, I asked to push this episode a week because this is unlike anything that we've ever read. It is quite long, but I mean, it's
Chunky
also
boy.
it's quite a collection. I mean, it is called the Epic Collection. So normally we just do like a collection that's like a
shoulda known.
storyline. Yeah, but it's going into it. I didn't know much about the New Mutants except for
A movie was
the movie that's coming out, but also like a couple of years ago when the FX show Legion. I didn't know. I only like found out like, oh, it's related to X-Men, and I started doing a little research on that, and I was like, the New Mutants, what is this? But I didn't read anything. And so this is my first experience with the New Mutants. So it was really cool and it was kind of a breath of fresh air because like Tom, what you were saying is that like, it's not as superhero-y. You get like kind of backstory of everybody. You get to see like their interactions with each other. And then there's also some kind of superhero moments and stuff like that. So I really, really dug it, actually. I really dug it. The artwork, I was like, wow, this is so cool. That's my first impression. Back to someone else.
I'll go.
The password is
As Tom would say about himself, I feel like I'm in this group, at least the X-Men, blah. And
As I hear it.
I'm holding this right here, right behind me. I have my all my trades. And I'll be the first to admit I'm not as familiar with the New Mutant stories. The characters I am, but I had only read maybe one or two New Mutant comics, and none of them were included in this collection. So this was all foreign territory for me. There were a lot of aspects I really loved about this. Like Tom said, it's very much so about the people themselves rather than fighting to save the day, and the inner workings of like what it's like to become involved in the X-Men and the Charles Xavier lifestyle that he's kind of built,
Not being a
at
part
the
of the
very
main
beginning.
team or that kind of
Right,
thing.
and like what it's like to just kind of attend that school when you're not Cyclops or Nightcrawler or all these people,
An X-baby.
and the pressures that actually has, and the stigma of being the new kids. It was very fascinating to read. I am a big fan of Legion, the TV show and the character. So getting to read this one was very refreshing, to touch on that. But all in all, I really enjoyed my time. I ended up reading it, even though it's 500 pages. I ended up reading it twice. So
Same.
Wow.
Just also to add on, the tone feels very much like what the 90s cartoon was.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll admit since it spans some years, these comics, the tone does shift pretty dramatically as you go along. Some spots I wasn't as enthralled in, and we'll get into that a little later. But overall, I would highly recommend this, like you said, to anyone who's looking to kind of jump into something a little different in the mutant world.
Yeah.
Kaylin or Ollie?
I can go. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I couldn't tell.
You have permission.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I went into this super blind. Like Tom knows this.
As you do.
My first real exposure, funny enough, to the New Mutants is the Fox movie that's eventually going to come out as of the recording of this. We don't know when. And I kind of immediately dismissed it just because it was a Fox X-Men property, and you guys know how I feel about that. Didn't give it the time of day. Watched the trailer. I didn't know who the characters were. I had no exposure to the comics, cartoons, anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
So jumping into this, I didn't really even know what to expect. I just knew it was a little bit older than what I've read for X-Men. I'm usually most of what I've read have been from the 90s and 2000s. So I was very pleasantly surprised right off the bat to kind of get that sort of like charming old school feel right off the bat. And which is very much the artwork of Sal, maybe Buscema and his coloring crew. We'll go over those later on. Spoilers for the person who drew it. Okay, cool.
Now I can't read it. Now I know who drew it. No.
No, everyone at home listening as well. Like Ollie is the one that kind of suggested not to do spoilers at this point, and we all decided it was a good idea. So now I'm just like, everything.
So
Spoilers, bro. Spoilers, bro.
Yeah. What is it, like 20 issues that we read, including if you include the annual in there. And I just have to say, like, my whole experience reading it was so charming and so like, it was so pleasant to kind of see the evolution of the series over 20 issues. Like it's insane to see where it starts and where it ends up.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait,
Different
this feels like something that would maybe
storylines
take a couple decades to happen. Like as far as like the tone and the feel and the artwork and all that stuff. So it was really cool to kind of see that progression and to read New Mutants Annual #1, which we'll talk about.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, very positive.
Kaylin?
So, this I only knew about New Mutants so far as the trailer for the new movie that's coming out is concerned. But I had watched that trailer like when it first came out, and then I hadn't revisited it because I was like, I don't know what any of this is. And reading this, it was like a mix of like D&D OC characters and wrestling.
Yeah.
Because within the comic, they would have ads for other offshoots.
The other ones? Yeah. Spoilers.
And I was like, this is the first time I've encountered like promoting different comics within a comic.
Yeah.
That
so
is
I was
very
like,
citing,
universe.
more like citing.
Yeah,
right.
That's citing your context.
That's actually very common. It's like, check out this issue. Very common.
I don't know why.
say.
Like, maybe I just hadn't seen it as frequently. Like, maybe it popped up once or twice, but I just wasn't really
It's
cognizant
more
of it.
frequent in the older stuff, not anymore.
Yeah.
That makes sense. But it was very interesting to like have all of these. It seriously felt like wrestling. It felt like there was the
Triple H versus The Undertaker. Check out that episode on Saturday.
pretty much.
Yeah.
And it did annoy me a little bit, which I'll get into later, but it wasn't like a huge problem. I like the way that they handled everything, the way that the characters gelled, and then kind of the issues they brought up. There were a couple of dicey things, but overall, I really liked how they handled everything. It is a beefy chunk. So like you gotta commit. You gotta commit hard to like read this whole thing. But I will say, when I was done, and I know I'm gonna get shit for this, but like as I was reading it, I was like, I wonder if these peeps are gonna end up in the New Mutants movie.
Nah. No,
And then when I
had
watched
the
the
exact
trailer,
same.
it was really exciting.
Well, okay,
I had
now,
the exact same. I went back and watched the trailer, and I was
was
like,
so
"Oh, I got
good.
names."
but now you're like, oh, I know exactly what's gonna happen in this movie, baby.
Well, but then I was just like, "Oh, this is who they cast." Like I had that also.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I had
loved it.
there was a
Hey,
round of
woo,
there was a
yeah.
round of realization and then a round of like
There's actually
indifference about the cast.
Kind of an outcry
Oh.
of who's cast as Sunspot. Not a lot of people are stoked about that because he's too tall.
Really?
It's too
Yeah.
tall.
Yeah,
He's too
because
I
tall.
think he's perfect.
Well, this is
He's
to be
supposed
honest,
to be
this
short as shit.
this
and
is
He's,
exactly-
he's one of the tallest ones there.
This is exactly what happened with Hugh Jackman in Wolverine. He
Yeah,
was
that's a
like a
good point.
nobody from Australia who was like 6'7", and like Wolverine's 4'9".
Yeah. I've
And he's a
never, again,
Canadian.
I brought
And
this
so
up
Are you
here.
casting these children to start a saga to impress you that much?
I've brought this up here millions of times with my reference to judging Heath Ledger before I saw his performance, and I'll never do it again. So I'm looking forward to seeing this movie.
I'll bring it. I'll bring it up later on when we can do more spoilery stuff. But like, yeah, there is a casting thing. I'm like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
say
we'll see.
my interest in the movie has gone up at least 20%.
Okay.
At least 20. Oh, that's. I
So
mean,
it's at,
probably.
it's good from
at
zero.
it's at a comfortable 7% now.
Here's the thing. Yeah.
can-
like,
Yes, it
I
was
can
negative.
easily say that like I was not even remotely interested in the New Mutants movie at first, and like now I actually want to see it.
Oh man,
I
I
think
was
Tom
like,
and I are, because we
yeah.
knew the behind the scenes stuff.
We're-
Like it's a horror film with mutants.
oh,
like,
God,
and the thing
oh.
is, Disney did a bunch of reshoots and then decided, now let's just go with the director's original vision, which
no,
is
yeah, like that's
awesome.
exactly
I didn't know
exactly
about
what
that.
happened with Dark Phoenix too. Like Disney just kept meddling in because like, oh, the ending is just like Captain Marvel, so you can't do that. And it's like, fucking A, you bought it, just fucking send it.
Yeah,
like,
so they
just let
decided,
it
but
go.
they scrapped most of the reshoots they did and just went like, let's just go with the tone of what the director
Yeah.
wanted. Let's do horror mutants. And I was like,
That's awesome.
and
Ooh.
and I'm speaking as someone who is an X-Men fan and fucking hated the last like 3 Apocalypse. I fell asleep through twice. It took me 3 watches to finish the film.
Wow.
Took me
So
a couple.
I'm looking forward to this movie
good.
tenfold now.
Don't
Obviously,
worry.
I already was, but
The filmmakers on that series is not attached to this one, so we might
here's
get
an
actually some
interesting
stuff.
tidbit. Are we still in non-spoiler territory or can we-
Non-spoiler territory,
Yes.
baby.
Oh well, then I
we can
can't
just
say
get
nothing.
past the next 2 parts and then we can get into it.
I wanted
Yeah,
to say
so
something
that's
about the
talk about-
director and
but-
characters,
for
but
me.
I
So,
can't say
Caitlin,
it yet.
So Caitlin didn't like it. So
Yep, hated it.
Yep.
she didn't say that.
Way
she
to
didn't say the phrase.
generalize.
All right. That's what happens.
Don't let
and
me
you
forget what I want to say about the director because now I
Okay.
feel like I've
Okay.
cock blocked the audience.
That's good. No, a little tease, baby. Got to go past our mid-roll credit ad. I'm kidding.
Which
Next
we don't have.
we'll go. We don't. That's I'm
Yet.
just playing. Yet.
Anyway,
Next, we'll go into the next 2 segments, which is going to be our brief summary / synopsis, read to you by Josh, and then we'll go into our production, read to you by Tom.
and I think
go
we're
on-
just taking the synopsis off the book itself, right?
Yeah.
yeah, it's just
Yeah.
the summary in the back. So go ahead, Josh. Please sing us.
Well, first of all, this does collect New Mutants 1983 numbers 13 through 31 and annual number 1. Don't call them X-Babies anymore. Visionary artist Bill Sienkiewicz. That was hard. Thank you for your website, Bill, because he actually pronounces it in his logo. Sienkiewicz. It's great. Transforms the New Mutants, and the young heroes' lives will never be the same. New recruits, Magma and Magic, find their footing at the school. But when the team tries to rescue Kitty Pryde from Emma Frost, will they all end up as members of rival mutant team, the Hellions? Then the demon bear that haunts Danny Moonstar bares its teeth. Will the New Mutants survive the bear's ferocious attack? And if so, can they make a new friend in the alien called Warlock? Plus, a cosmic caper introduces intergalactic rock star Lila Cheney. Is it Lila or Leela?
I said
I read it
Lila.
as Leela.
I said
Lila?
Lila. Look at us.
Lila Cheney. When
Straight down the middle.
Look at us.
Sunspot and
Look at us. Who'd
Wolfsbane
have thought?
are in danger, only Cloak and Dagger can help. Professor X's son, Legion, makes his mind-bending debut, and an old friend / foe makes a shocking return. That was like
Good job.
40 minutes.
I would read an
Yeah.
audiobook, read by you.
Yeah.
Sweet.
You would read an audiobook read by him? That's cool.
Yeah. I would mute him and then have it in the background just to support
So you would just
him.
read the book.
Yeah, just to support
No, I want
him.
Josh's transcription.
You got a face for radio.
Great.
Anyway.
I do. And
He
you
like
have a-
pulls
you
up
have-
his video and puts captions on and mutes it, and it's like,
but
this is
also,
great.
Josh, you also have a butt for pornos. So
Okay.
He's not wrong.
We'll come back to that later.
Yeah.
Spoiler section.
Spoilers.
And the eyes for a telenovela.
stay tuned for that segment later on. So now we'll do the production. The publication is Marvel Comics. A lot of people know them from Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four.
Incredible Hulk.
The writer, what?
I just said Hulk. I was just naming shit. I wanted to be
Hulk,
involved. I love it.
Captain Marvel, Kamala Khan, a penance, whatever you want. Chris
some
Clairemont, who is the writer. We did an episode, God Loves, Man Kills, also best known for Dark Phoenix Saga.
It's like him
X-Men-
and Hickman right now are just like,
Yeah. And X-Men issue number 1 with Jim Lee. Now, I'll let you everyone know that this was the new issue number 1. So underneath this is a notable accomplishment. X-Men number 1 is the Guinness records for the highest selling comic book of all time. And Chris Clairemont also helped create characters like Phoenix, Kitty Pryde, Gambit, Psylocke, Emma Frost, Nimrod, Mr. Sinister, Mystique, and many more X-Men favorites.
Yep.
Or in this comic book, they say X-Man. Artist is Sal Buscema, worked on The Incredible Hulk for 10 years, and recently has been doing work for IDW with G.I. Joe and D&D, The Forgotten Realm. Bill Sienkiewicz, who has done work on Moon Knight, Elektra, Assassin, Daredevil, End of Days. And Bob McLeod, who I want to say that actually people who may know the McLeod or I've heard different pronunciations, but I apologize if that's the wrong one.
Or like McLeod or something.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if that's the right one because I know like the Mick names sometimes have a different pronunciation.
Easy there.
You're right. You're right. You're right.
I know what you meant, but
Yeah. But co-creator for New Mutants, Superman, Man of Steel, and Spider-Man: Kraven's Last Hunt. The publication for this specific epic collection came from, or it was published in July 10th, 2019. Yeah, that's all the production, baby. Now we're out of the spoiler-free county. We're
So,
in
the director-
Go ahead. Director, let me know.
about New Mutants, this, another thing that got me really excited is I feel like Rain is a really tricky character. As we read in the comic, where she is kind of like at odds with herself and her religion. And I guess the director spoke about being drawn to this project because of that character, because he had a extremely religious upbringing that he was at odds with for most of his life. So I think he's going to handle that really well in the film. And I'm excited to just see how it, knowing that now it's a piece of him is in it in such a specific and personal way. I'm excited to see how it comes out.
I mean, let's talk about that real quick. We're now in our meat and potatoes, so we're talking about favorite parts, favorite characters, and we'll do second character, not side character, just favorite first character, then second character.
Okay.
And then we'll do our qualms and we'll rate it. But one of my favorite aspects is I pronounced it as Ronnie or Ran. But
I only said that because of the trailer. It says
Rain. But yeah, it's interesting because I watched a lot of like different like readings of New Mutants,
like comics explained and like
and a lot of other video essays about different New Mutant stuff, like so like where they're at currently, because New Mutants really came from this time where like they had so many different things, and Jim Shooter, who is the chief editor in chief, was like, hey, Chris Clairemont, I want you to create a new squad, and you know if you kind of had to pick this up, like at this point most of the X-Men squad are like doing the Secret Wars and all the big like crossover events, and so what happens to all the New Mutants, right? And so that's kind of like a really great picking up point. And Chris Clairemont was like, I'm just going to focus on the drama and do what like teenagers do, and the team has waxed and waned from like here and there, but they kind of came up and almost like started the comic book bust because like everyone started like, oh, these are like celebrity writers and stuff like that, and then people started putting more stock into it. Anyways, that's a fucking tangent. I loved.
it was interesting. But I love tangent.
Yeah, I loved Rain. Because of the fact that she came from such a religious background and she was always conflicted with herself, and I found that so great because I think what the older X-Men did was talk about marginalized communities and people, and we've talked about it before where Charles Xavier gets related to MLK. Gets related to Malcolm X. But this kind of started really playing a little bit of more of like not just racial inequality, but judgment, but the LGBTQ community. And I feel like how people have so much issues with themselves with it internally, not just how people perceive me, but how I perceive myself. And I thought that was just a wonderful kind of note. And I think that's what
self-worth
really cool.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that was a really cool note that the comic book started to play with, every character always had something like they were doubting about themselves, and it wasn't about like, hey, we had to look good in front of everyone else. It was more like, I don't know if I belong within even this group of quote unquote like gifted children or people who are outcasts.
Well, I think that's why the interaction she had with Nightcrawler was such an important one, because it's the other side of the coin, right? Where he again had a religious upbringing and decided that no matter what he looks like on the outside, who he is on the inside is still that same person, and his faith
Yeah.
shouldn't be shaken because he was created this way by who he believes in. And so I think, I think he's with Sam at that point, and he
Yeah.
starts to yell after her, and he's like, no, she's got to do this on her own.
I was going to
Trust
mention that's actually one of my favorite parts because I love Sam's character.
Guthrie.
I love that he,
Yeah.
not that I mean, it sucks for him that this is his kind of inner struggle, but he's constantly struggling with his worth as compared to his powers to others and his control over them or not. And I love that scene with Nightcrawler where Nightcrawler's just kind of, I paraphrasing,
Walking
but he
through
kind
it.
of says like, it's like your value is not decided by this or that.
Yeah.
Your value as a leader or whatever is decided by your actions. And
Yeah,
this
and he
kind
has
of
that
stuff.
that moment where he's like, well, I just didn't do it. And he was like, well, neither did I my first time. Like,
Yeah,
you can't get from A to C without B.
your
that's what you're missing.
cannonball. You know how much
Yeah.
force you have? It's gonna take some time.
Yeah.
The one thing I really dug, like I love their relationship, like from the very beginning of Cannonball giving Rain kind of like reassurances and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
He
on the
has his
train.
own insecurities. So it was really interesting to see kind of like each of them kind of have their own insecurities, but you really do get a sense of teamwork and almost like family because they're all kind of supporting each other and they all kind of have their like sort of confidants that they go to, and then they're all kind of work together really well as a group. So it was really cool to
Mhm.
see that kind of like that sort of like mundane everyday life sort of
I
character
mean-
development.
I
you
mean,
know?
like to that point, it's like it's not the world is ending every time. It's like teenagers dealing with the fact they have powers,
Right.
Yeah.
And like there are shows like on Hulu, they have Runaways, and I think ABC had The Gifted and stuff like that. So it's like they're like Marvel definitely has a lot of play where like in another universe, like the X-Men would be like like almost a perfect palette for like CW shows. Because
Mhm.
like just teen drama and like
Yeah.
what happens between it and focusing on relationships, I think was like I think this is the strongest point of this comic because you're not really like you start really worrying about like how do the other mutants perceive them, and in your mind you're always like, no, these are good people, and it's really interesting to see like a viewpoint, a window into the soul of all of them to be like they constantly doubt themselves and they constantly just try and do the right thing, even
Mhm.
though like we don't put that weight on them, but they have this
Yeah.
self-imposed weight because of where they came from.
Well, X-Men's always been praised for being like that sort of like perfect allegory for, like racial issues or LGBTQ issues,
It's
social
whatever
issues,
group
anything like that.
is being marginalized.
Yeah. But I mean, this one, I think this book, you definitely feel it the most. Like it's almost, it even talks about some of those issues kind of immediately. Like it brings up, it's interesting to see the sort of like group of like the racial diversity and what they were kind of aiming for and kind of seeing
Yeah.
that kind of come together. And because at
Brown
first
people,
I
baby.
didn't really like pick up on it at first as far as like, is it appropriate that he just called him, hey, Brazilian? Like, do you walk down the street and call, like Brazilian guy, hey, what's up, Brazilian? Or hey, what's up, Russian? But it's interesting because like, I assume, and that's the thing, we started at issue 13 of New Mutants, and I really want to go back and read issues 1 through 12.
Mhm. Well,
um,
and if you did, it'd play into what happens at the very end. So
my guess is that they're all kind of like freshly moved to New York, right?
well, I mean, the first part is pretty much I forget if it's Jean or Storm, but someone's going to go pick up Rain, and Rain is
Yeah.
the first New Mutant, and
Rain's the first- pick her up, so she's like in what is it, Scotland? That she's in.
With Moira.
Muir Isle. It's
Muir Isle.
it's where Moira
Oh, that's
McTaggart
right.
is.
That's right.
And where like Charles is like super sad because he thinks that the X-Men are dead, and he's like, I shouldn't be doing this. It's pretty much Dark Knight Returns, like Batman. But then like Rain comes first, and then he has one mutant with him. I forget, it's either Mirage or Karma, and I forget the names change and all that stuff, but it was just one person other than them. And as we found in the comic book later, like that person is perceived to be dead and then comes back. Later on the group comes together, and I think it coincides with one of my favorite parts where like he says like, I've always been the mentor, the teacher, the leader, but I've like, this is the first time I feel like I'm the father. And I
Mhm.
was like, I really enjoyed that. Cause like, I mean, I'll always say this, I'm always going to be in that.
You mean Charles?
Charles, yeah. I'm always going to be in that corner where I think Charles Xavier in comic book form truly is kind of a dick. And Like no visual representation has ever shown that, other than comic books, because I'm like, he is super like 2 steps ahead of everyone else, and like they just don't show that a lot. Like he's definitely very capable, but it's like part of the story of him is kind of like, how much does he let the world really affect him, and how much does he really struggle with like, I have to be the positive force, but sometimes like I have to sometimes trade lives. And it's like, that's like the crazy thing where it's like the blurred line between him and Magneto is like much more blurred than just like that one's good and that one's extreme.
Yeah.
You know? Caitlin?
Are we on favorite parts?
Yes, we are.
There's just so much happening. Probably most things to do with Ileana and Limbo.
Okay.
I
was
have
really cool.
discovered part of why my giant struggle with comic books has been
Because you're a demon?
what?
No,
I mean,
I'm just-
no. No, I like really high fantasy. And if it's too close to normal world, and for me, superheroes are too close to normal world for me. Like Star Trek, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, those are all like high fantasy. Like things are explained because
Well,
there's
that's
a
why-
completely different set of rules. So that's why I'm like much more okay with it. But comic books try and use our world stuff to explain our world superhero stuff. And to me, like I only like then my brain is looking for every possible loophole and I get kind of lost.
Yeah. Well, because the superheroes came at a time where people were in concentration camps and needed to see themselves in someone. So it has to be a
Right.
little more grounded.
Yeah. I mean, that's why
and
you
I mean,
like.
I get them. It's not that I don't understand why they're there or anything. It's just that just doesn't appeal to me since it's a,
but
that's
that's
just
why
not
you
my
like
bag.
you like monstrous so much.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Love Monstrous.
You should get Saga. You should go into Saga. I'm telling you.
Oh, don't you worry. I know we're gonna get there. But yeah, most things with Ileana and Limbo, and like I want to know more about her story in the past, and I really want to see more things about, like her and Peter a little bit more. And the whole introduction of like Warlock was very cool. I love the idea of like this weird
We
robot
totally got
god.
Meanwhile in Spaced.
We totally did.
Meanwhile, we were
multiple
just
times.
in like upstate New York or whatever. Meanwhile, in space, okay.
I know.
A meteor.
Be right back.
I also love that things just randomly became like telenovela love
Yes.
stories on the side. Like it was happening
Yes.
everywhere.
And that's the thing where it's actually like into his credit, like a lot of people say that Chris Clairemont actually made X-Men much more like a soap opera.
Yes.
Where like
Heavy agree.
And to me, I'm here for it. I was raised up on that stuff.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
Well,
and
especially with teenagers, like it's all love and hormones and
Oh,
even
yeah.
like with characters, it's just like even the X-Men proper, where they're like, it's just like what's going on between,
yeah.
you know, like
Wolverine
Jean, yeah.
and Cyclops and Jean Grey and
But also like, Wolverine and Cyclops have a difference of opinion, so they're gonna break off. It's like it's not about
Peter
like,
and Kitty Pryde. Like what's
yeah, it's not like, oh, we're not gonna make bridges and all that stuff because you don't agree with what I do. It's like, no, we just have different. It's like it's a really cool balance that he does, and
I
he makes
really
it just much
dug
more.
the-
Go ahead.
Sorry, I was on that point of the sort of old school like look. There's a panel on, I think it's the first issue of like Amara just kind of like she kind of messed up or whatever, and she's doing her like woe is me, like everything's
Sat in the
terrible.
forest on
Oh
her
my
rock.
goodness,
where she's like on the rock, like
very dramatic.
So sad.
And I'm just like, this is great. Like,
Yeah.
That's
there's
why you
something.
left.
There's something about these like older comics that I find it's not in a patronizing way or anything like that, but it's very like there's respect there, but there's also a very kind of like this would be just fun to read if I was like 12. You know what I mean?
Well,
like this would be incredible.
I mean,
if I
the
go
cool
back
thing.
and read this.
The cool thing, I think, our version of it right now is the gritty, dark stuff.
Yeah.
Like our version of what that soap opera-ness like is then. Like ours is like mad, broody, and what's my identity? That
Yeah.
shit where it's like
A lot of
we
that.
get it. Like, and then like
my
40 years
parents are
from
dead.
40
Yeah,
years
the
from now.
very self-aware kind of
And
like
now I'm a
conundrum of the ages sort of like approach to everything.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
Exactly.
I knew.
But no,
I knew
it's
there
more
was
like
a build up going to something.
I'm not wearing.
No, yeah, Corey, you have to go.
If only I had
I'm not
hockey
wearing
pads.
hockey pads.
They all think I'm wearing them, but I'm not.
The
How
inner
do I tell
struggle.
them? What will
Another
Bobby think?
A
Yeah,
favorite
Josh.
part for me is it's actually more of just an overall thing about this is it was fun to be, so you start off reading it and you're reading it and it's kind of like a certain style, and then around page 120 to 121 the style shifts and I was like, oh, what's this?
That Demon Bear?
The actual Demon Bear Saga.
The Demon Bear Saga, and Bill Sienkiewicz starting to look into his stuff, and he
Look
did a
at you
variant of
saying that
Spawn
name right.
301 recently that I didn't know that it was him. I just thought it was one of the dopest variants, but I really dug the style. I just throughout the whole thing, I loved when somebody was losing their shit or something like that, or they were going into chaotic. They had this like swirl in their eye. Like this, like
Yeah.
just
Creepy.
the design of it
super
was just so-
abstract.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm
Like
not
late, like
usually,
way later in.
Yeah, I'm not actually usually into kind of the abstract style, but I've never seen it applied to like comic books like this.
Well,
Um,
and they use it for very good context.
Yeah.
Oh man, like the sunspot stuff later on.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
towards
yeah.
the
I'm
back
like,
issue-
almost
back
I'm almost
issue.
talking about like
Dagger.
the glass of memories.
Yeah.
Like that
Oh,
stuff
the
I really,
shards, the little crystal
I
things.
really love that. Like, and to Josh's point, like I actually had this conversation at the time of this recording on our Discord about comic books, and I was talking about like I used to be this like really, and I call this like almost pretentious way where like I used to be very like I need to have my art look like golden age stuff, and like I really like the butt chin and the you know the weird bravado-y
Halftone.
thing. Yeah, you know, like everyone's wearing like a unitard and stuff like that. Where like now recently I've been very much more like if the art is definitely like really goes well with what the context of the story is, like I'm all for it. And so like this, yeah, definitely Sienkiewicz is phenomenal, like with like just some of the covers and like what trying to make it more than what it is. But even the other artists in the collection too, like sometimes there's lack of detail in certain things, and it's I so dig it. I just absolutely love it. It's
I think it pulls a
interesting.
lot more emotion out of the page, and
Yeah.
it lets him do a lot more dramatic framing.
Yeah.
So because it just feels like he's a lot more free with kind of like he'll take an entire page to do.
Like if anyone
a
can, if
giant
anyone has
bear.
it, 165. That's the one I'm looking
Yeah.
at right now.
Oh,
It's just a
dope-
giant,
Yeah.
and
like
then
probably
minuscule
like
people.
7-story bear.
And then
Mhm.
130
Oh,
on
oh.
page 137, this giant bear with these huge claws, and Danny is just there like,
Oh fuck.
I'm
Well.
tiny.
well,
Yeah, 182 also is
Well,
another good
shit.
one. It's really crazy. I really like the framing in it, but then you see Magma really tiny in the corner fighting the bear, kind of. In the background.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot of really cool shots like that. So the artwork definitely lends itself to those kinds of shots. And even things like I'm just kind of just browsing through randomly, things like silhouette shots and things you don't normally get in the other style, which like you said, Tom, as you're kind of aiming towards the different subject matter, the different art makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. For me, favorite parts is basically the entirety of the Demon Bear story. That's when I really got hooked. Before that, I was like, "This is all right. This is
It's
this
brutal.
is interesting." And then that comic started, and I was like, "Oh shit!
When Danny was attacked,
This is what I came
Oh.
here for."
Well, reading
like when you didn't realize she was attacked or whatever.
Oh yeah.
reading this collection in this way, it felt like such like a pilot season.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like here are the characters, blah blah blah. There's some tension, there's
Wee.
some shit you don't know about. But we'll probably talk about it later.
Okay, some character,
And then when the
closeness,
Demon Bear Saga comes in, it starts to being like, oh, this is the 3-part episodes where it's like you don't get the whole thing, and when you're like, okay, what happens the next one? What happens the next one?
Yeah.
That's when I found myself being like, "Oh shit! I just read 100 pages." But specific moments would be, I know we already mentioned the one with Nightcrawler, but there's also a moment with Charles and Bobby where he's got the pressure thing and he's trying to push it down, and then he has Danny scare him with the brood mother, and Bobby's being really hard on himself, and Professor X is like, "If you're gonna yell at anyone, yell at me. I did it. I told her to do it." He's like, "I just don't get it." And he's like, "If you don't think that every other X-Men has been standing and feeling the same way that you are right now, then you're mistaken. You're on the right path. You just have to keep pushing through it and believe that you can do it." Because Charles really believes that Bobby has more potential than he's giving himself credit for, which is awesome. But to be able to hear that from Professor X himself, being like, every single person that I've trained has felt the way you're feeling right now, where maybe this is it, maybe I'm not good enough. And he goes, the important thing is kind of what you do with that information now.
Do you mean
And
Sam?
I loved that moment.
You mean like what Gandalf said, kind of?
Yes and no. I mean, because he was talking about the time you're given with it, but I'm specifically talking about like with the knowledge that, you know, the people who have come before me and who have paved the way have also, you know, had their trials and errors, and I just have to know that this one's mine.
I like how you hold on to that aspect of that part. The part I really held on to was, do you think you'll only be able to use your abilities when you're at full concentration?
Oh yeah.
And I was like, that.
I mean, the whole scene's phenomenal.
That is like strict father shit that I'm like, you're right. He's so right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, that was a really kind of powerful moment. Yeah, I meant Sam, not Bobby. Just because you do feel for him throughout this whole run. I was like, is he going to leave? Is he going to run away at some point? Because I feel like all signs are pointing to that. And then something like that will happen where he realizes, oh yeah, I'm still new at this.
And I liked how like he kept going back to I'm the oldest, so everyone looks up to me. And that's such a thing that you kind of deal with, that being like a teenager, being a kid. Like,
but he hasn't even been there the longest.
Yeah. And so like to me, like I 100% get that. Like where I remember like being that age where it was like whoever's the oldest is quote unquote in charge. And then later on it got to the point where so many times where it's like, no, circumstance is going to make whoever's in charge. And that just happened so many times where like I really love the idea that Danny Moonstar as well as Sam Guthrie were both like the leaders. I was like, and they both lead in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where she's super tactful and he's kind of just like,
she's
more
the planner.
inspiring.
She's the planner and she can't fight, but she can definitely like take care of anybody like if she can. I'm like, that's really cool. Yeah. And like him just get out of the way. And I was like, oh.
The other thing I really love, I just love, and I always have loved this, how Legion is drawn. Basically the entirety of that comic. Well, yeah, first of all, his hair is nuts, but also seeing the aspects of him in all of his other two counterparts. Like seeing the hair in both Jack and what is her name? What's her name? Cindy. Yeah. I was just trying to remember, it's like with a C-Y. I love it. It's like
C-Y-N-D-I.
Yeah. Just those little nods to that, like, oh, these are the same person. You can tell by the attributes that they have that they're just different parts of David.
Yeah, Michael Myers should play him.
All right. But yeah, that I couldn't stop looking over every single page of pretty much Demon Bear to that comic. It was beautiful.
One thing that I really liked, and talking about Ollie's point of some silhouettes, there's one silhouette, baby, that always tickles my fancy, and that's always a sunset kiss, baby. And that happens, meanwhile, a story with Magneto, and I'm like, yes, give me this soap opera bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. Because the cool thing is
he's basically Batman in this run. He's just like struggling with...
Well, I really liked, it was kind of like, it's his redemption, you know, it's like him learning to love, but then learning about why heartbreak hurts him so much. I was like, I feel you. I understand you at the fundamental level.
My goodness.
Okay.
I was there for it. And then like when she was like, I'm scared of you, blah, blah. I was like, and he's
so
like, my first wife did that. I was like, oh, I was like, I just loved it. And then he's like,
your heart, your poor heart.
I just loved it. But then at the very end, he comes in, he's like, I come to you as a friend. I was like, and now, because it was funny, he was like, I had known that, you know, this was kind of during the time where Magneto takes over the X-Men. I just didn't know when. And so when this happened, I was like, this is it. This is where it happens. And then I was like, that's, you know, it's one of those cool things. Like, I remember side tangent. I remember like in Dragon Ball Z, like you see Super Saiyan 3, you're just like, is this the episode? Is this the episode? Is this the episode? And so this like, is this the issue? Is this the issue? Is this where he comes? Is this where it happens?
Is this the penis? Is this the one?
Imagine being back there in the 80s and hearing a rumor that Magneto would be taking over for the X-Men, and you're just like anticipating.
I mean, currently right now, aside from, you know, all the special conditions and everything that's going on outside, like that is the current announcement with DC is that Batman will be black. And it's like, but who? Is it going to be someone
But
new?
what?
Is it going to be is it going to be one of the characters we already know? We got a couple of black characters who can be. And it's like who?
Brand new.
And so that's
But
that's
who?
the thing where it's like, oh shit, what's going to happen? Caitlin or yeah?
I can go. We should talk about New Mutants Annual #1.
Do it.
Yeah.
The
Should we?
Cosmic
Opera?
Cannonball Caper.
Yeah.
I don't know how you guys felt about
Oh.
this comic, but I had a lot of fun with it.
I thought it was dope.
It was in space, so
It was in
and
space.
strong female.
Just so we're clear, it is.
And-
Oh, with binary?
This does feature Sam, leather clad.
You're
becoming
talking
a
about
sex slave
with
for
Lila.
with Lila. Okay, got it.
Or Lila, becoming
Or, yeah.
Lila's sex slave, whilst she
Wow.
auctions off Earth to the highest bidder.
Oh, I
The rest of
absolutely loved
Earth.
it.
I love this comic.
I loved it. The reason why I loved it is it actually reminds me of Spider-Man the animated series because they
Yeah.
would have a lot of guest stars. And actually, I don't know if you know, but the person who made that da-na-na theme is the guitarist for Aerosmith, and
Joe Perry.
they play a lot of homage to him in the series. And so for this, I was kind of imagining like if this was an animated series, who would they voice for Lila? Like, and I can imagine like would it be like Lady Gaga or something like that, or who like that's what
You
I
know
kind of
who
got
would
from
be
like,
Joan Jett.
No, well, I was thinking it would be
Oh,
Lucy Lawless now.
okay.
Hmm.
I
Okay.
was going
Or KT
hopefully for a
Tunstall, because
musician.
I pretty much inserted KT Tunstall over her
or Michelle
while
Branch,
I was reading.
or
She have a
who else do you want?
Cockney
Ollie?
accent?
No, it's no. Well, she's Scottish, so close-ish, and then I would same like vicinity. Like she has, all those accents are great, so I like hearing them all.
Those accents are great.
Making me politically save myself, Caitlin. Thank you.
Yeah.
But no, she's a dope rocker chick, and that's what I'm drawn to. So that was really awesome right off the gate, and then it just becomes more and more silly and awesome and ridiculous.
And it comes back into play where they go back to the Dyson sphere.
Yeah.
And
And like the Dyson sphere reveal happens because,
Yeah.
and like I knew what a Dyson sphere was going into it. I didn't know it was in the X-Men universe at all. And then
Yeah.
she's like, oh, I'm just going to teleport us to my Dyson sphere. That is, I love that it's 1 million. What is it? 1 million, the distance from the sun, I think. I want to say,
So
I
it's
realized the distance
undetectable.
from the sun to the outer shell is like the distance of the Earth from our sun, I think, to make it perfectly habitable. So the
Mhm.
entire inner sphere is complete. That just like blew my mind in a completely different fashion.
In a
But
good way.
then, in a great way. And then I just enjoyed the story.
In a
and-
destiny way.
Yeah. It was,
Oh, yeah.
Thanks. Thanks to belittle all my interest, Tom, as per usual.
Just bring it
that's
back
what
to
that's what the
Destiny.
Traveler is. It's a Dyson
But
sphere.
no, I mean, that cover, I can talk about this issue for a very long time, but I definitely want that cover as a poster. And it is
For
my
sure.
mission now to find
Let
it.
me see the cover
The
real
like
quick.
Star Wars esque.
The Star Wars-esque cannonball on the ground in his sex slave outfit.
And he's kind of like
her
doing the
reaching
the-
out to the stars with a
the
crackling
layout,
earth
yeah.
behind them.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
crackling
that
earth
sounds-
behind
yeah.
them was the cherry on top for me. So I got to
Because
find that
it's
poster
like the Traveler after it's all broked
now.
up.
Okay.
It's Steal This Planet, a rock fable.
What page is it? So I can just take a look. Never mind, I
it
found
is-
it.
226.
Yeah.
Excuse
For everyone
It's
that's playing the read along.
1,
I want to jump
Reminds me
back
of
up
heavy metal.
to Caitlin, some favorite points. Soul Sword?
Yeah.
Soul Sword and
Soul
Arm.
Sword.
Swole
The
sword.
Eldritch
Can't even-
Power. I was like, this is
My
so
other
fucking
favorite
good.
part written
That
here
was
is
very cool.
anything Ileana does.
Yeah.
Literally anything she
Yeah.
does. So it's
Anything
like,
she does is super cool.
why
I
isn't
love
she the leader?
her
Well,
She's
design,
dope as
too.
shit.
I think that's kind of what the film is going to go into. If you saw some of the trailers and like
Yeah.
just see the
She
sword,
had it.
I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of the cool. Well, to me, it's kind of like she's like the Wolverine of the bunch. You got Jean Grey, you got Storm, and you got Cyclops. So
Yeah.
you got like the three, and then he's like, but we all really like this one.
Yeah.
Tom, I have
Yeah.
a question for you without spoiling too much because I kept running into potential spoilers when I was looking this up. Tell me about the connection with Ileana and the Soul Sword to the Sorcerer Supreme and how it works with Doctor Strange. Is it like the same
No
magic?
So she
What do we
is
got?
like quote unquote the Empress Sorceress of Limbo, but in comic book, aside from what the MCU has done, his power derives from different deals he's made with different entities.
Yeah.
So Corey can attest to this. Juggernaut is not
Oh.
really a super strong dude. He
No.
actually just has
What?
a gem from a god called Sidorak. and that gives him the like a fraction of this
Visibility.
god's power.
Yeah.
And to kind of
What?
put it into context, if Sidorak was in his dimension, and let's say, I don't know, let's someone that people can think, if Thanos was there with the Infinity Gauntlet, Sidorak would still like wipe the floor with him. Like
Oh.
in those dimensions, those gods are absolute. Such gods like, let's say, what's his face? Mephisto, who gives Ghost Rider his powers. Like he's absolute within his dimension. And so
It's also one of the prime evils in Diablo. One of the three.
It's more of a leading question, I guess. Like, do you think we'll see any of this stuff crop up in the MCU without
To me,
the New Mutants?
I only see a future where Disney just does like a. I mean, and I say this in the nice way, and I also say this in the Disney does as Disney's is. They completely just ignore their past, and so they're going to. I think they're going to ignore completely their Fox division stuff.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
kind of like actually to lead to another comic book show, or a comic book thing. Constantine, the show. There you see his like little hideout, and then you see like all these magical relics from different characters.
So good.
I could imagine it kind of like attuned to Iron Man 2, where you see
We'll start
Captain
seeing
America's
pieces.
shield.
Yeah.
And so you would see like
Soul Sword.
maybe-
Perfect. Give me that.
maybe you would
Sum
see
me
like
up.
like armor that looks like, you know, the like Magic's crown. And
Well,
so
if you
like,
look
stuff like
in the
that.
trailer, and they may not be leading up to this anymore. I know Fox was leading up to Mr. Sinister, but it's his school.
Mm.
It's not the Essex school. It's
Oh.
his last name. Milbury.
Oh, okay.
I think.
yeah.
It's on
Yeah.
in the trailer. It's written above the door, and they're probably
Yeah,
going to
yeah, yeah.
abandon that, unfortunately.
Oh.
But because I think they were, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if you look this up later, correct me. But I think John Hamm was going to have a cameo as Mr. Sinister, and they cut it once it went over to Disney.
That sucks.
Yeah, but Javier Bardem is in it as someone, so we'll have to see. He
That'll
is
be interesting.
not
Oh
Javier
my
Bardem.
God.
Excuse me.
Oh.
I think that.
It'll be really crazy if
No,
this is a
no.
really
I'm
well
thinking of something
received
else.
movie.
I apologize.
I was gonna say, like,
But
what?
John Hamm was initially supposed to be Essex.
You just gave me like a misfire hard on, bro.
I know Antonio Banderas is in it now. I don't know what he's going to be playing, but I know he's in it. If that helps.
the cool thing to kind of think about, and we can kind of have fun with this, is imagine what Fox really had in mind, because like with Deadpool 2, they brought in X-Men. And so like they show like, okay, they're willing to acknowledge that those two exist and coexist in the same time frame. So like thinking of how like the last film ended off with Essex and New Mutants ties in with that, like, and thinking about the third Deadpool film, which probably would have been an X-Force film. Like the New Mutants and how they are now currently, thanks to Corey's Lord and Savior, Jonathan Hickman, they're kind of back to form. They're back to being like the New Mutants, like we're kids, and right now they're in space.
Yeah.
But a lot of like what happened, time?
Sorry, yeah. You guys can hear that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Someone's moving a trash can.
I know
Sorry to cut
exactly
you off.
where I left off. Don't worry, it's all good. So good?
Yeah. We can't hear it anymore.
And so what really happened with the New Mutants is that they all kind of got branched off, and so they would all go to like Excalibur, or they go to X-Force, or they go to Generation X, and like the New Mutants team was kind of just not really the same team, because once Chris Clairemont was actually told to make Excalibur, then they brought in Rob Liefeld, they brought in Louise Simonson, and those issues kind of really didn't do that well, but then they brought in that same Deadpool vibe of that heavy metal, big action, guns. Like this is during the time where even Spider-Man had like a patch and like had like a visor looking like Deadshot. So I was like, well, why? But now, but now, like currently, the New Mutants are like all together, and it's like this cool reunion, and they're all like they like bamboozle space pirates to like take their ships and stuff like that. So it's like that same
Bamboozle.
fun vibe, but like in more fantastic spaces.
Yeah.
So
Caitlin, were you gonna?
And we got
say-
Hope
'cause
Summers.
We were gonna go to more of your favorite parts, but did you have more to say?
Side tangent.
Yeah. I did really like that Lila was sending Sam care packages and that Xavier hated it. That was hilarious. It was just tiny touches, but that was cute. I also like that they were all like taking dance classes, which I know is part of their training.
Yeah. It's
but-
in she's even in God Loves Man Kills. in the beginning.
I would
the dance teacher, Stevie.
I would almost like
right.
not put it into like it's so much as a training thing, but it's like his institute's not just to train child soldiers. They are actually learning stuff.
It felt like, it was like, I think
Right.
it's meant to look like a normal school. And I want to say like back then, maybe they had like dance as like a normal class.
A movement class, yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's their practical fine art.
But also Stevie was like part physical therapist as well.
Right.
In the comics.
Mhm.
I'd like to see
Um,
Stevie in live action films. That'd be cool.
yeah. I'm good.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed a lot of Moira McTaggart. And seeing how
Even more so now
yeah,
that
and
House of X has come out.
yeah, and just seeing like a little bit more of like what who she really was. And I really liked the in between parts between Charles Xavier and her, and it was like the first, they love each other, and then he went away, and now they became friends, and now they're like truly great friends, and it's like that kind of like love that like I think
Evergreen love.
evergreen love, and I think that's also kind of rare to find nowadays. And typically, when you see those stories of like when people like exes can still be friends, they tend to be really, really great friends because they kind of know each other a little bit more than what other people do because they know like beyond that surface level. That it's like I could tell when you're lying, I could do that stuff. And they're not afraid to really be honest with each other, but then they'll be like really there to help them get through some hard times. So like I absolutely love like the kind of stakes involved with having those two characters around each other, and having Moira like be in peril, and it's like, oh shit, what does he do? And it's like, it strikes an emotional chord with them, but it's not romantic, and I think that's a really good like line to play with.
And her moments between her and Rain too, where she's really trying to prove to Rain that you're like, I love you like a child, even though you're not my own. And then seeing that come to fruition with her calling her mom was like, damn. Yes.
That one shot though, where she says, I love you, where Rain says, I love you. And then Moira says, I love, and then in next frame, you, and she turns into the werewolf transition. I was like, oh shit, that is a horror movie, like effect. I'm like, that's cool. Like,
Well
that's
done.
awesome. And then she's like, we're not alone. I was like, ooh, some shit is about to happen. And then they all get wiped, and they all take some big fat L's.
Wipe it up.
Wipe.
Next segment?
You want to do?
favorite
Yeah, want to do
characters?
Quim Quams? Favorite characters in Quams?
What are you doing?
I have it written here even, and I didn't
Least
follow
favorite
my own
characters.
notes.
Let's do
Wow.
favorite character, and then your second favorite character.
Okay.
Corey, you want to go first?
Ileana and Warlock.
Yep.
Easy
Yep.
peasy squeezy lemons.
Exactly the same.
Ileana's fucking fantastic. I liked her before reading these, and I love her even more now. One of my favorite characters is Colossus, so I was very familiar with other parts of his family as well. So getting to dive deeper into where she began and knowing where she ends up, I was like, yeah, everything she's doing is fucking baller as shit. Like even
God.
using her sword, knowing it wouldn't kill them, but enough to scare the aliens, was a badass move.
Josh, when if you ever play the mobile game, I forget, like Marvel, is it Contest of Champions, whatever, where it's just like
Strike
a side
Force?
where you're just
Oh,
fighting
yeah.
each other.
There's a couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Magic, that's her
Yeah.
code name. It's
With
like
a
her
K.
sword is like it's like a Buster sword, bro.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
It's pretty sexy. I'm like, fuck.
Hell yeah.
Oh, and her putting the shields up around Danny's operation room
Even
Oh,
with her
yeah.
life force.
yeah,
Mm.
even just stepping discs,
Yeah.
and I was like, that's so.
And healing
that's so cool.
herself.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Anyway.
then she's facing
Like,
the,
is she
the,
from
the
the Dark
pentagram
Knight?
the other way.
Yeah.
So this is
Wrong way.
black magic.
At one point she goes, no, I could get us there. I just don't know either when.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be a problem.
I like she's like, let's go back. Let me try again.
And then Warlock just learning how to human. Like killing that
Self-apologize.
Sweet little
seagull.
babby.
Killing that
What's
seagull
going
and then
on?
being like, you can't do that. And he's like, oh, sorry, I could bring him back to life. And they're like, oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, and like, does his armor break in the annual? Like, I didn't know what happened to it. It just like went away.
No, it like
It breaks, right?
he gets his armor.
Yeah.
Armor.
I mean, his whole
He doesn't
body.
have
He's just
armor.
like circuitry.
Yeah, he's just a robot, kind of living robot. I know that he gets overpowered when Lila does the
Yeah.
like Stargate. His like energy gets overpowered and he
And then he
almost
becomes
combusts.
a freaking ship.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
awesome. Anyway,
Gangster.
those two, and then Caitlyn also the same, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll go ahead, Ollie.
Oh, sorry. Mine is definitely, sorry, I had it written down.
Is definitely Lila. We get it. We get
No,
it.
it's not, not
Danny
Lila.
was baller too. Like, don't want to sleep on Danny.
Oh yeah,
Can't
it
really
was,
sleep on anyone.
Yeah. Oh,
For me, it was Ileana
Sounds fun.
1. Ileana was first, and then actually we like Shadowcat, even though she kind of she's
Kitty?
more heavily in the beginning, right?
The
Kitty
X-Man.
Pryde.
She's in the beginning and at the end.
And at the end, yeah,
Alpha and
it's your
Omega.
favorite
Kinda
X-Men.
Spears
How
for a
could
bit.
you not?
she kind of spears for a minute. Yeah, she's my favorite.
And
But I like seeing her like in a different place,
Yeah.
entirely from what I'm used to seeing her, like different role kind of thing.
I like how this one also keeps harking back to how she is a genius level intellect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you never ever get that in any other form other than comic books.
Oh, and getting to see the
called
origin of
C-Class.
Cypher was
Oh, yeah.
unexpected.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Douglas.
Because I love Cypher, and he's a huge part of House of X.
Mhm.
Or House of X. And so getting to see that he just started off as like Kitty's friend, I was like,
And he doesn't know anything about them. It's like, all right, we got to
he doesn't
figure out
know
what
he's
the
a
hell this
mutant
thing
even
is. Yeah.
until Warlock shows up.
And
That's
it comes in
pretty,
handy a lot.
pretty badass. Yeah, he does. So yeah,
To me,
I
he was
agree.
definitely the Donatello of the group.
And also shout out to Claremont. I got to see 2 of my 3 favorite X-Men, and got to see
I was like, as
Nightcrawler
soon as I
and
saw that
Colossus.
tail
I was like,
come in.
yes. Tom,
man.
Josh.
Tom?
Josh,
Well, you were going to start. You were going to start, and then Ollie went. So
now you're going to
go
do
ahead.
these things.
No.
Now we go
Oh, I
do
pulled my
these.
headphone
Okay,
out.
I'm kidding.
Oh, sorry, I
Okay,
just
I'll
said Bamf at the end.
I will say it's the same. It's Magic and Warlock. Although I will say I loved reading Danny and Sam.
Same. Danny
Um,
was.
You can't have the story without them, but
It was hard.
seeing how effective they are, but also how nuanced their characters are. Like when Ileana came into play, it became all right, this is her story now. And then when Warlock came in, it's just only want anytime I saw a panel with him, it's I can't wait to get to what he's gonna say. And it just became really fun. Obviously you have your surrogates and stuff like that, but it's just really enjoyable to them. And obviously, to Corey's point, yeah, this has a lot of favorites, especially the best mutants as Magneto. So
Yep.
go now, Josh.
My favorites are Locke and Cannonball. They're pretty equal for different reasons.
Oh, Warlock. I was like, who's Locke?
Warlock.
They call him
because
Locke.
they call
Yeah.
him Locke.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
gonna say,
I was
it's not
thinking, I was like,
Lockheed the dragon.
yeah.
So yeah, I really enjoyed Sam's struggle through it, and just being he is very powerful, but he's just struggling so much with not being able to control it, and it really affects his psyche.
Can't
And
turn,
then Locke,
baby.
he just cracks me up.
Mhm.
Like the way that he speaks, like
When he-
self apologizes or self.
When he thanked the ship and was
Oh,
like, if you ever want to
yes.
hang out, I would be glad to.
No, I love. He's like, I'm sad that you do not turn into another form.
Yeah,
was like,
I
yeah.
just loved that. Because she's like,
And-
what's he saying? It's Blackbird, Blackbird. Oh, Blackbird. Oh, the ship. Thank you for your traveling for us.
Nice.
yeah.
Qualms?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now move to the
Gripes?
qualms. Corey.
Yeah. Oh,
We're keeping it to 2, but go ahead, Corey.
the annual issue.
Really?
I didn't like it. It just felt very, after dealing with like a demon bear and all that kind of stuff, it just felt very silly, I think is the word. The enemies
Mhm.
looked very like Hanna-Barbera.
Mm.
I wasn't
bit.
wasn't
They're-
very frightened of them, and I wasn't they were taken out pretty quick.
Well, they're
Um,
pretty cookie cutter. Pretty
yeah.
cookie cutter.
And it just I don't know. I think maybe my mind is ruined because of the Rick and Morty episode about heists, but it just it didn't capture me. I think it's the only part I really skipped the second time I read it through. And that's yeah, I think that's probably my I could have done without that and gone on to the next one. That's my
I think it's also
It's very
to
out
that-
of place.
Yeah, to
Yeah.
that point, it's very for this collection, it feels very weird because it feels like you should be reading all these.
yeah. I
serial
think if I had
stories.
read it as like a one-off,
yeah,
not included in like Demon Bears and traveling through space and Warlock and all that kind of stuff. I think I would have liked it a lot more, but where it sat, especially within the collection, just felt like a speed bump, I think, a little bit.
And I think that's also to be a testament of like what annual issues are. They are really that supposed to be that celebratory, like, hey, this is that like in I guess to say in a term for like TV and movies, it always feels like it's kind of like a backdoor pilot where it's
Mhm.
like, I don't know why the fuck is this even happening. And it's really just kind of there to bolster sales and like have people like, hey, like this is the annual issue, so you can read this one, and then like you can kind of get into it. And it's like just a fun romp. It's a one-off. It's a filler
Yeah.
episode for
Mhm.
anime. In that kind of sense.
Yeah, I think that's really my only one, except for maybe the first comic felt a little slow
Mhm.
for me. It was a little
It was very exposition-y.
Yeah, it was a little grueling for me to get through. But the second time around, not so much, just because you fall in love with the characters a little bit, so I didn't mind as much. But yeah, once Ileana gets there, that's kind of when I'm like, all right, cool. Yeah, but that first one is just a bit, like you said, too exposition-y for me. I would have liked to learn along the way rather than just kind of have it all. But that's
Ollie,
that's
pour it
a
on
personal
there.
preference
Just
thing.
Pour
Yeah.
it on to you. Just
And it's so wordy. Like you have
exposition.
these like
Mhm.
big
Thick.
dialogue
They're big.
boxes. Yeah.
Can I-
and that's what got me.
Can I go next just because that's what mine's related to? My only qualm of this entire book is that there were some pages that were just overloaded with dialogue and text. And then like I'd turn the page and I'd be like, oh.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Yeah. And
let
it
me
depends on
read
when
through it
too.
and-
Like for me, the early stuff is when it's tough. Like the Legion one, I understand
Mhm.
because you're dealing with some really heavy, in-depth, like psychic shit, and you're
Yeah,
in
I
a
had a-
completely psi
Mm.
world.
Or
Like,
as they say, psi abilities.
yeah, it
Yeah.
didn't bother me as much there, but like before that, you'd turn a page, like you said, Josh, and just be like, all right, let me get my reading glasses. Hold on.
Yeah.
Definitely to put it in a phrase, it's like the first 100 pages are harder to read than the last 100 pages.
Yeah.
Because like just how much like text to picture or text to page ratio is like
Mm-hmm.
ridiculous. Not ridiculous. It's like very common for the time, but it's just like, if you haven't read anything of the like in this era, then it's like, I'm reading a real fucking
Yeah.
book, baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean that's I kind of I get what you're saying, like kind of the later stuff with like Legion and stuff like that. It's still daunting. It was still
Oh,
a daunting task
okay.
for me where it's like, wow, that's a lot of, but I mean, the thing is like about my qualm, it comes down to like, it's kind of a product of its time. A lot of comics
Mhm.
back then had
Absolutely.
a lot of dialogue to the page. So it's one of those things that just from this experience of reading this book, it was like, or this collection, it was
Yeah.
a daunting task at some times. Not saying that it
Like-
wasn't enjoyable dialogue. It was just like,
The 80s were a time of, they didn't mean anything by this, but maybe calling the Native American girl chief ain't the best thing to do.
Oh yeah, no. I
Yeah.
mean, isn't that still the
But
contention?
at the time,
with
that was like when a
sports
movie,
team?
like, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest came out, and one of the most endearing characters in it is a Native American guy named Chief. It was just a different,
Yeah, it's
time.
It's also how
Yeah.
you play with it too, because I mean, like,
it's endearing for them.
yeah,
you
but
know.
also it's like I was just saying, like, isn't there a sports team that's still like
The
Reds?
Braves?
Yeah, the Braves.
Yeah.
Or it's just like
It's still an
at
issue.
this time, like,
Yeah.
it's super apparent that that's not like.
I
shouldn't-
think the Redskins are still around.
yeah, and like
Yeah.
And
now,
I think it was from good intention. Like I think they were trying to just bring the light to all the different races, but just the way they went about some of the execution is a little questionable.
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely
today's
different,
standards, anyways.
different to read.
Today's
nowadays.
standards, for sure. The 80s were a wild time.
Yeah.
Ollie, Caitlin.
Yeah. Yeah, I can go. The main issue I had with this book, and it was the issue I've had with a couple other Marvel books, was I was starting to notice when my lack of knowledge of what came before or what was happening parallel to was starting to negatively impact my understanding of what was happening in this comic.
Yeah.
Mm.
That's why those
So
citations
when it would
are
have
so
that
helpful.
little that
Yeah, when they would
citation
make
where
like
it's
little
like,
citations, I'll have to admit, Legion. What are the 3 comics like starting with Legion? I had to read those like 2 or 3 times
Mm.
to really understand it, and I still don't really fully understand the story and what happened in it. As far as
Oh.
like
I mean,
like what had transpired, what I was supposed to get from the characters' journeys and things like that. So yeah, that was the only thing I had a little bit of a challenge with, some of those back issues towards the end.
okay. Just to dive into a little bit, so it's like almost twofold, where like you don't know what's happening within the context and you don't know what happens outside the context.
Yeah. So at first, to give you a little bit of my context of like reading through it, I was really, Kaylin, it bothered you a little bit, but for me, it didn't end up bothering me, but it was those little like citations. And at first I was like, oh my God, there's this massive world outside of this. Who knows what the X-Men are getting themselves into? There's some crazy world-ending phenomenon going on. Meanwhile, what's going on with the New Mutants? I can dig this. This is kind of cool. But at a certain point is when it started to like tip over the other direction, where I was like, okay, we're getting into some territory here that I'm not familiar with. And like the stuff like Legion and his son and kind of like how that affects everybody is still a little cloudy for me.
To that point, I really want to actually make like highlight and underline this, because I think that is an overlying issue. It's pretty much exactly what we talked about, why sometimes people feel like it's so daunting to get into comic books. Because like, where do you start? How do I get the whole thing? And like, you could almost like say the same thing with every visual adaptation too. It's like, well, if you want to understand it, you have to watch from the very beginning. And so it's like, now you have to watch 28 films.
Like I can't just jump into Fast 9.
Yeah, now you have to watch like
to me,
70 hours worth of CW.
Gotta watch all of them.
My thing was jumping into Magneto specifically to point something out, I guess, because I didn't mention it specifically because it's not a commentary on the subject matter at all. But it's the side stuff with Magneto.
Why is he stranded? Why was he in
what's
space?
He doing? What's going on? Who's this chick? Okay, I'll wait. It'll be answered maybe, and then it never kind of does.
It didn't feel. Because they're taking these selections from at a time, and they're not editing out the stuff that had extensions. But I'll agree, if you were to take this just at face value, that Magneto stuff I don't think belonged within this story.
Yeah.
But knowing that they just comprised a bunch of comics and were like, here, this is the best. This is the best understanding of what it is.
And it does come into play, but it was just kind of like I feel like I missed a lot.
I think that's also the folly with a lot of like when you see films try to adapt the actual storylines. Like you have to kind of just take the base story. You can't have all the tie-ins that actually kind of enrich in it, because if and that's the thing too, where it's like, and I'll kind of like brace you for this. It's not meant to be like a worrying factor, but like comic books now barely have all those like check out this issue. You kind of have to know exactly when this is playing during that time. Like, does this play before the new Secret Wars? Does this play before House of X?
Yeah.
Like, when does this happen?
Why Powers and House were so popular, is because you don't have to know shit.
Well,
you can just jump in.
I'm definitely of two minds of it, and I don't know where I land. I don't know.
I think it's definitely like a dialogue every reader and listener goes through, because like to Corey's point, like that's why sometimes companies find it so important to just reboot the whole thing, because then you give everyone a good jumping off point to play with, and then you could keep all the things everyone liked and you could throw away all the things people didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
So it is definitely like a I guess like a learned mentality to have with some, like when you're reading comic books.
Yeah. This is also kind of this is a very kind of an individual experience, I think, with this, because this is my first time seeing a collection that is like this. Like I've seen omnibuses that have but it's a one comic book and you're reading from a chronological thing. But this is a
trade.
This is just like we're doing this and kind of pulling some things together. So
it's an epic collection, some might say.
They might.
In July 9th, 10th, 2019, they might have said that.
Yeah. Kaylin, what you got?
In the Demon Bear Saga, Tom and Sharon, I think it is.
We got a problem with me. I got a problem with
I'm kidding. When they get turned into Indians, that felt. Sorry, I'm like remembering.
Well, that's the terminology that they wrote it.
Yeah, that's the terminology.
Native American is not written in there at all.
At all, yeah. So when that happened, I was immediately uncomfortable, because like a lot of the things that they used for like describing people who aren't white was like uncomfortable. But that in particular was very like.
Well, I mean,
why is this happening?
I'll add to that point. There was a lot of times where I was like reading, I was just like, man, I swear, if like I'm like the Google of PC culture, I'll just been like, actually, like half the time. But I was just like, let me just read what they were writing in the fucking 80s. Like, and I 100% agree where it's like, well, that doesn't play anymore. That doesn't play anymore.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, that doesn't play anymore.
They didn't have it.
Yeah, just turning them into Native Americans was like a weird move, and I feel like they didn't really explain it in such a way where it was like necessary or pertinent to the story. It's just like, now we're Native Americans.
It plays on later on, where they're in in Muir Isle with Moira. You see them like still being Native American, and they're like, man, this is weird. Like, we have new bodies. I don't recognize the person who I am anymore. And then that's it. But like,
right, that's what I mean. That's not, to me, that was not enough. That's why it's a qualm for me, because I just didn't like it.
I think the small little thing at the end of the collection, and it might play later on, I just don't know, but they do like a little bit like, now the spirits and souls are all sent back to where they were. And it's like, does that mean them? So I don't know.
I think my best guess is that they were really leaning hard into like the spiritual aspect of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why they just use that as like, this is how it's visualized is as a Indian, Native American, whatever, like talking to the spirits.
I was gonna say that
I can totally get that. It just didn't land for me.
I was gonna say, well, like Ollie, that is the most like positive intent I've ever heard you say about like a loose thread in my life. In my mind, it's like, man, they're gonna put them in another comic book, and then they're gonna be part of a team.
Yeah. I'd say it was a good decision. I decided I understood maybe their mentality.
To me, let's be real. With comic books, I'm like, yo, if you're not doing some of that character, I'm gonna see him in one of those comic books that are like technically the unsellable characters that you put in a team, like guaranteed. And so it's like, you don't bring them back for no reason. Like that, something's gonna happen to them. In my mind.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Is that okay?
So that, and then like the wrestling type ads for like, this felt kind of like NXT. I don't know if you guys know in the world of WWE
NXT,
at all.
baby.
No.
But it felt like this was like the NXT line, and then they're like occasionally being like, here's an ad for like our superstars. Go over here if you want to watch that. And then here's an ad for this thing over here. So that kind of like,
well, I don't
didn't mind it, but
so much ads.
At first, I didn't mind it, but it was like, it kept happening, and I was like, I want to get the full story. I don't want to like be sidetracked like a million times. So that started getting really frustrating for me a little bit, especially when it hit the Beyonder, like when we kind of like hopped that, and it was just like all of a sudden she's in demon form. I was like, I wanted to read that. Why isn't that not part of it?
But that's why those citations are important. Now you can.
Yeah, I was gonna say like
but that was like the next natural step, and for them to just completely like go around it, I was like, why'd you do that? This should have been part of this, because that felt like the next natural step. So it felt like they just took a whole chunk out and was like, buy it over here if you want to.
I think comics, they probably used to be a lot more serialized back then.
Well, it had, I mean,
like,
it has
well,
to
they
be.
still are. This is just a random selection.
Right. And
Not
like,
random,
I understand
but it's a collection.
the premise and everything. I'm just saying, like, as for this collection, as I read through it, that was like a qualm for me.
Yeah.
It was not
for sure.
as like,
Oh, sorry, I
it
meant
took me out of it a little
less
bit.
serialized. I meant, they're more like episodic one-shot kind of books, magazines sort of thing. Like you could read one and then never read another one or something.
Right.
No,
Like,
no.
the arcs were like really long playing.
Well, no,
And
I mean, every issue, they're explaining powers for the first time, as if it's a new reader.
It's
So
typically
there
like
is some aspect to it.
that like
What's
the
that?
the equivalent to that in like a Marvel book is usually they do it like current now, they do like a 1 page, and they'll just have all the heads, and they'll say like, this is Wolverine, aka James Howlett, who has this ability, and then you just read.
They are long overarching serialized things, but they treat it the way we treat this podcast, where every episode is someone's first.
Right.
So they're just as serialized, if not more serialized than they are now. It's just that they wanted to make sure that if someone bought this comic, it was their first day to a comic book shop, and they wanted to buy New Mutants number 28, they could still go, okay, who am I reading about? Okay, and that's why the citations are in there as well, because they're like, hey, if you like this, you can read these things. Welcome to comic books.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And I think to everyone's point of kind of like, it's interesting to like how they kind of curated this collection, because Magneto issues or parts where it's like maybe they could have taken that out so it would have been a more streamlined experience. and then like they don't have the explanations every time, it probably would have turned the book turned this collection from 504 pages to like maybe 390 pages if they did that. But I think the tough thing with that is kind of like, I mean, if you read the forward at the end where Bill is talking about like how like it is supposed to really kind of feel like this is how the things were at a time in like in a vignette where it is, you are kind of seeing like these are the follies of like if you were to read this in that time where it's like I'm going to pick issue 13 and then issue 19 and then issue annual number 1, you'd have like I don't know where the fuck these other issues are, and if you're not keeping up, it's definitely tough because like that's exactly
well, they're
what
also you wouldn't. It was like a TV show. You get them either a week apart or 2 weeks apart.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of like a refresher as well. Like, oh, what happened 2 weeks ago? That's right. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it's to talk about it. It's like, it is tough to especially see like, I 100% agree where it's like Magneto's
Previously
there, then
on.
all of a sudden like magic is turning into a demon, and I'm like, why is this happening? It's like if you're reading Batman, it's like, cool, Batman's going after Joker. Now Joker has his face ripped off. Like, what happened? What was the event? And that's the thing where it's like some people like absolutely don't like reading the crossover events because they're like, well, shit. Because now I have to read what happens to that character because it might play into my other character that I only read. Like I only read Moon Knight, but I have to read Doctor Strange. I don't like Doctor Strange, and it's like that kind of stuff where it's
like I only read Flash. Now I got to read,
you got to
Arrow
read
or
Batman.
something like that. Like it's
and figure out what's going on with the button, and it's like,
Yeah.
well, fuck, man.
And so it's a very interesting like, and I think that's what's really effective about it's a collection. So it is a time capsule. Like it is showing like some of the things that I think new writers nowadays try to write just 6 issues. And that's why, like Caitlin, we talked about this before when we're getting the comic books and you're like, it's like fan fiction. And I was like, it was like, it's just so that this doesn't happen. It's just so that like one person doesn't have to be like, okay, up top, they're doing what? Okay, cool. Now I have to write this somehow and intertwine it into what I'm doing because it has to connect to wherever the fuck they're doing.
Yeah,
And that's
it's more self-contained. They only deal with, they show you what you need to see about that character during the arc.
like, and
and you
I
also
could
had these arcs that lasted years with the same writer rather than like, all right, Hickman's going to do 6 of each of these and then hand them off. And then he's going to take just the X-Men and other people are going to handle this other stuff.
It's like watch Spider-Man Homecoming, then watch Far From Home without watching any of the Avenger films. You're like, how did he get the suit? But why did people go away for 5 years? But wait, what? Like, but why is Iron Man dead? Like all that shit. Like, oh, I don't get. And then it's like, well, you could watch the Infinity War.
It started to
It's like,
stack
that's
up.
what
And I
they
think
sound
that's
like.
what it was. It was like, at first I was like, oh, there's a couple things here and there. That might be fun later to read. And then it just like kept stacking. And I'm like,
yeah, I mean,
okay,
the point of this epic collection is for you to get an idea and then for you to choose what you want to read and go off.
that's
and read
what,
it.
yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I decided
It's
to
not
focus
like
on
a
more than anything.
cohesive story.
Yeah, I kind of forgave it as far as like when I was reading through, knowing that. And I think that's probably why, and like to be clear, because I wish you brought up the annual stuff while I was talking about it, because to be clear, it's not something, I don't think it's like a masterful piece of literature or anything like that. I think I enjoy it because of how ridiculous it is. Like that's what.
Well, you're
but
living
again,
in it.
you're
living
it's
in it.
its own self-contained thing.
You almost
I think
expected
it's
the
silly.
line, and I would have gotten away with it. It wasn't for you kids and that silly dog.
Meddling
Oh,
kids.
yeah.
and-
It's like,
Yeah.
if you
Definitely
watch
see
old
that
school
happening.
Scooby Doo and like
Should have been
sometimes
it reveals
100%.
It's a
it's like
Scooby-Doo issue.
I would honestly say it's like watching old school Batman cartoons, not Bruce Timm and Kevin Conroy, like old school Batman cartoons, and then seeing the
Yeah.
Scooby Doo episode, being like,
Yeah.
why
But-
is this
yeah.
happening?
But yeah,
So-
I brought that up because just to show like it was cool to see a whole breadth of variety of kinds of comic in this book.
And now
That's
for
what I
something
kind of
completely different.
yeah, exactly.
I'll-
And
I'll-
like
Space.
for me, like I said, if it had been if they had reordered it or it had been separate, it just followed Warlock and Demon Bear, which was like,
oh yeah,
it was just an
It's
odd
different.
place for me.
Yeah.
yeah. But it
Um,
was cool to see like them do a lot of that, like citations at the beginning, and then like less throughout, and then like
yeah, I actually
sometimes
used
it's
them.
kind of like
I kept
later
actually
in the
looking up-
issue.
yeah, I kept looking up the episode.
It's
Actually,
like, oh, by the
that
way,
they were
Cannonball
like,
can't hurt himself no matter how clumsy he is.
I used it. I used the citations every time. I Googled them on my phone. It was like, oh, Secret Wars. What was happening then?
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
And
that's
then,
why
and
no
then it
one's
goes
around.
into Secret
Got
Wars
it.
2.
I
Yeah,
kind of want to
Which
read Secret Wars because I
everyone-
haven't.
you should.
I haven't
read the
anything.
first one. The second one is highly not well received.
Highly not great.
Yeah.
No,
Not
but
well
you know what
received.
happens in the Secret Wars by number 8 is the first appearance of the Black Suit.
I was gonna say Black Suit Baby.
Black Suit Spidey.
Yeah. I'll round out the qualms and we move on to our rating. For me, it is specifically that one part where Magneto's there, and then the next issue starts out Magic is turning into a demon, and you're like, God bless.
Yeah.
You would turn this into a 1,000-page collection if you just included the arc, I'm assuming. But it's like, well, shit, man, I want to read that. But like, which is a good thing, right? So it's like it's a love-hate, right?
Did its job.
Yeah, it did its job very effectively. And then the second thing and my last thing, and I'll be completely honest, reading the speech bubbles and how they are kind of layered over each other. It's really cool to see unique, well done ways of doing it. But sometimes I'm like, thoughts turn into speech. And I'm just like, which one?
Oh yeah, they would
is
go.
happening?
look for the rounded.
Yeah, you look for the rounded,
And
and then you
cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I had
and
some
then-
logic questions with between Rain and Berto when they were talking. I was like, wait,
Who said
you
that?
hear her? Or can
when
Danny
she's-
only hear her? Or
Danny could hear her in wolf form, but everyone could
Yeah.
hear her in transitioned form.
yeah, but there would be moments where she would be in wolf form speaking speech bubble with like Berto understanding her.
Well, there's the half form, wolf form. Everyone can
transition.
Maybe
understand
that's
her
what it
there.
was.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
a
when she's
transition
full wolf, only Danny can understand her
Okay.
thoughts. But then
And they
there's
ha-
what they call transition form, where she's the best of both,
Right,
and she can talk.
Danny Moonstar and her special rapport.
Yeah.
But like I just
I love
love
that they call it a rapport.
I love it. Like
saying
just
that.
It's so old school. Like,
I love that, but also every Psylink, I'm like, we get it. But like but I mean, that's the thing where it's like watching The Godfather and being like, this is a film. And it's like, we get it. It's like, but then when they made it, they didn't. So
Yeah.
shut the fuck up and understand what you're watching.
Right.
So for me, reading this, like it was very like I did have some like let me fucking read that shit one more again because
Yeah.
I don't know who the fuck said that. Or it's like, but I did. I mean, there's a really cool thing, and I really like that where it's like you would see bubbles turn into yellow squares because it's the opposite camera reaction,
Mm-hmm.
and then you would see
Yeah.
like the dotted perforated lines where it's like, oh, that's a whisper, and stuff
I
like that.
like
So
that a lot. A
and so, like,
whisper. Like,
yeah, there's like so there's a lot of cool ingenuity they have there, but like I am only assuming that like Chris Clairemont's like, yo, man, I gotta write these stories and they're so rich. I know where they came from, what's gonna happen to them. I know their blood type. I know
Just
their
like
social
that.
security number, baby. And it's like I gotta fit that all in, baby.
yeah.
And it's like, and
And they're like, by the way, you have 15 pages. And, you're
and it's like, oh,
uh,
Bill, they're only gonna give you nine panels. Oh man, that sucks. Don't worry, we'll make it happen, baby. You know, it's like
Yeah.
that kind of shit. So,
draw
and-
two faces. I got the rest.
Yeah,
Here, we want to write this in 45 pages with 15 panels on each. Well, you have 20 pages and you have 8 panels. What do you want to do? You're like, oh shit. We'll fit. We'll
yeah,
fit.
We'll make it fit, baby.
We'll make all
it
that
fit.
dialogue fit.
Just grease. But, so yeah,
But it is pretty ingenious to use the different types of, like, I didn't think about it before until this, because they use it so many different ones so often. Like if I was a writer and an artist, like how do you portray whispering, or how do you portray psychic talk as opposed to speech bubbles? Like it's a really,
I mean,
really ingenious kind of way of
Purple
doing it.
in outline thing.
Yeah.
just like in pure art form, like comic book writing is so ridiculous. Like I was watching this thing with Jim Lee, and he's the current publisher and the CEO of DC Comics, and he was talking about like the thing he hates to draw the most are animals, because he just doesn't understand how the anatomy works of them moving. And if you think about that, like on the minutia of like,
yeah.
it's like drawing human like in a standing pose is easy, because like drawing them in motion is like that's when you have to really understand how form works. And he's like, I had to draw. He said like I had to draw a rat, and I didn't know how to draw a rat. And so I looked at a Chuck E. Cheese cartoon, and I was like, okay, how are they doing this? And he's like, all right, now I can draw this. And it's like that kind of shit where it's like you just have to think really outside the fucking bubble. You know?
Was it one of you who was telling me that like no one knew that something about how horses ran until there was a slow motion camera and they figured out that there's only 3 hooves at a time?
I knew that from a long time ago, but
I've
I don't
seen it,
know.
yeah.
But it reminds
I know
me
we've
of
had
that.
a conversation. Yeah.
It's like he didn't know how to draw animals until like no one knew that there's the feet never leave the ground for a horse, or there's a time where all feet are off the ground till there was a slow motion camera and they were like, oh,
Yeah,
we totally got
they
it
did
wrong.
The frames, yeah, one
Yeah.
frame. Like, cool.
So now
Yeah.
we go into rating.
Tom, why
Rating.
don't you kick us off?
Okay, for me, for this epic collection, I'm
And I'll
going
go
to
next.
say this is man, I really like comic books. And despite all of its blemishes, I would give this a 4.4, baby. Good, solid 4.4.
Wow, nice. I decided to wear my bear sweatshirt today
Nice.
for the
That's
for the
the
Demon Bear
demon.
episode.
Has a mustache.
Being the X-Men, it was really refreshing to see this side of things. I am a bit saturated in the types of heavier things that like X-Men proper deals with, and I do lean more into those and feel it a little bit more. But getting to read these, especially with like Demon Bear and especially Warlock, I have to give this a 4. Amongst all the other X-Men things I've read, this is a pretty. It made me really interested in all of those. Like, okay, I got to read that now. Oh, I want to see why this happens. I'm going to read this, and I have a list in my phone I made while I was reading it my second time of 17 different things I'm gonna get and read. So it did its job pretty well. I'm really fascinated to dive more into the New Mutants for sure.
Nice.
New Mutants are great.
Yeah, 4. So which one of y'all's is
4.
next?
Shall we go alphabetical? Ollie, Caitlin, then me.
Me?
Yeah,
Sure.
God
Sure.
damn it, Josh.
It's
Like I said,
logical.
it was a
Do
really
the
cool,
alphabetical by last name then.
Yeah, do I?
I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No.
Man.
I just give Josh shit every time for that.
I know.
I really enjoyed this book. It was a great sampling of exactly what I wanted. Actually, I've been wanting to kind of go back to some older comics for a while, and this kind of definitely satiated that quite a bit.
Dope.
And I'm very interested now to move on to finally catching up on Powers of X and House of M and all that good stuff.
Text me all the things
So
when you
good.
do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Please. Anytime
queued
of night,
up
I
and
don't
ready.
care.
So that'll be happening. But I did have some issues here and there, and I did have to admit, maybe it was just this read through or whatever it was, but I had more fun with the beginning half of this book because of that reason. And yeah, I'd say this is it's hard for me. This is weird. I'm kind of stumped a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and stick with the 3.9. It
okay.
doesn't quite reach, like 4 for me is like this really nice thing of like things that I would be proud and to have in my collection. Obviously, this would be proud to have in my collection as well, but it's not something that I'm going to be talking about like a lot and kind of bringing up in conversation. It's not going to like influence things. But I'm really happy I read it. I do want to read more New Mutants. I'm very excited not very excited, but I'm very interested in the movie now to go see that
Yeah.
and see what their take is on that. And I'm
so many qualifiers.
Yeah. I'll be honest.
It's important because it's important for
Yeah.
me to
Choose your
communicate that this is Marvel knowledge that I needed to attain.
Ollie has
Personal.
made it a stake where he
Right.
only gives a shit about MCU, so he has to have the
So
qualifiers.
the information stream was what is definitely going to be part of the score on that.
Ollie, my first read through, I write down for comics and stuff we read. I write down my first
Yeah.
read through. I write down it was a 3.9, and my
3.9.
second bumped it to a 4 for just a few reasons. So
Mhm. And you know what? If I read through it again, which I will do, because I really want to get a better grasp of like the Legion stuff.
you can text me anything you want about those too.
Okay.
I'm more than happy to answer
But
what I know
once I read that, I'll probably be in the 4s.
for sure. Caitlin,
It is a 4 for me. I'm not like, it's probably something where I'm probably not going to read it again for a long time. But there were a lot of concepts and characters that I really liked out of it that made me glad that I read it.
Exactly.
Well,
So,
I,
yeah.
I feel like Ilyana Rasputin kind of like tickles you to the point where it's like that's almost pure fantasy.
Right. No, she definitely is.
I have some comics for you then.
But Warlock was like another like thing that I really enjoyed about it, and more of the like, you know, the oh my gosh, what is it called? The sphere,
Dyson
Lila's sphere, Dyson sphere, like the Dyson sphere, like stuff
Ooh.
like
So
that.
you like either high fantasy or high sci-fi?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So it touched a lot of those things. And
Anything
like
to
the
break away
whole,
from our reality.
Legion. Yeah. Anything to like fully break from our sphere
Legion
of
was a
existence
fucking
is
trip.
like my thing.
If you're interested in
so
Dyson
yeah.
spheres, there's I think there's
There's
a
a
National
vacuum.
Geographic, I want to say a documentary series, and one of the episodes is about a Dyson sphere.
And
I think it's called.
Legion-
I think it's
Legion-
called the year 1 million or something like that.
The Legion FX show is something you should check out then on FX for sure.
All right.
Josh,
I'm going to give this a 4.
Fuck.
Hey.
God,
I
didn't
enjoyed
go
it
there.
all
All
God.
right around.
no one in the Nerd On Nation got it right.
Wow. It was
yeah,
you,
I
Ollie.
enjoyed the
You-
read.
You were
There are some
always-
things that affected my enjoyment of it, which we talked about. Yeah, but I'm interested to read some parts of this, and I'm interested in to go back to the little asterisks and revisit and see. Oh, that's what they were talking
going back to
about.
Secret
Oh, that's
Wars.
cool.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
man.
I legit feel like if Corey didn't read it for the second time, or if Ollie read it for that second time, everyone could have had all fours or something.
Yeah,
had all
probably.
fours but me.
There is a timeline where we all have force.
Yeah. Sing us out, Josh.
Yeah.
Everybody at home, thank you so much for watching or listening wherever you are. If you've read this collection or even part of this collection, let us know your thoughts, who you thought would be the grump. If you are new to Nerd On, thank you. Welcome. Consider looking over our website. Our website is nerdon.tv. It has all the information of everything that we do, all of our episodes. This is we are in the 140s. Wow.
Making it happen, Captain.
Making it happen in the quarantine.
At the time of this recording.
Being your quarantainment. Yeah, consider joining our Discord. It is nerdon.io/Discord. Consider joining the Nerd On Nation, nerdon.io/Patreon. It does allow us to keep growing and be the best that we can be. If you're listening, wherever you're listening, stop by, rate, and review us. All of that housekeeping aside, you know the drill. As always, Nerd On.
Nerd On.
Ending broadcast.